Howdy folks, and welcome back to War Thunder with the mighty Jingles. Yes, that's right, War Thunder. I know, it has been a long time. Why War Thunder video Jingles? Well, no particular reason. It's been a really long day for me, and I'm absolutely exhausted. And I was browsing through the comments of the previous week's videos that I've uploaded on YouTube, and I noticed a common thread emerging. A lot of people are going, Jingles, where's the bloody War Thunder Jingles? It's been 8 months. Well, it hasn't quite been 8 months, but it might feel like it's been 8 months. I thought, well, you know what? Let's do a War Thunder video. Now, generally, when I decide I'm going to do a War Thunder video, I have to do a lot of preparation. I flash up the email, I look through for War Thunder replays, and watching War Thunder replays can take a while, because some of these, well, not so much arcade, but I don't really look at the arcade stuff anymore. You know, if you want to play arcade tank games and arcade aircraft games, then that's what World of Tanks and Armored Warfare and, dare I say it, World of Warplanes are for. It's the realistic and simulator side of things that interest me in War Thunder. And it can take a long time to watch a realistic or simulator battle in War Thunder, and as luck would have it, the very first game I looked at, this one, Garrus Vakarian and the P-51D30, wow, what a game. So, this actually ended up being quite easy. So, Garrus Vakarian, name of the pilot, probably a bit of a Mass Effect fan. I've actually got a statue of Garrus Vakarian, which I keep meaning to show off in an episode of Project Man Cave, but more on that at some point in the future. Garrus in the P-51D Mustang. He's flying on the Allied side, obviously, against the Germans, here in a realistic battle on the Norway map, which is kind of ironic because Garrus is actually a German player. I'm going to have a little bit of a break with tradition in this video. Normally when I do a realistic or simulated battle in War Thunder, I like to show off the eye candy. Particularly in simulator battle, when there's not an awful lot of UI getting in the way of the visuals in the first place. But this time around, I am going to leave the UI up for most of the video, although we're going to have some eye candy anyway. There it is. Isn't it glorious? You know, you can say what you like about War Thunder, but they know how to make a good-looking game. That is incredibly pretty. It never ceases to amaze me just how beautiful this game can be. However, for the majority of this game, we're going to be leaving the UI up just to make things a little bit easier for you to actually follow the flow of the battle and understand what's going on. Not something I normally do when I'm showing a War Thunder realistic simulator battle, but I'm going to try it out today. Run it up the flagpole, see who salutes. You've probably noticed that I seem pretty laid back and mellow today. That's probably something to do with how incredibly tired I am, and the gin and tonic that I've just had, so don't worry, I'm not drunk. That would be quite amusing though, wouldn't it? Jingles doing the video drunk. Would you just look at that? Gaijin? This is a really, really pretty game. And of course, it doesn't hurt that we're looking at an incredibly beautiful aircraft as well. I mean, it's no big secret that I'm a huge fan of Mitchell's Supermarine Spitfire. I've probably featured the various different marks and incarnations of the Spitfire in more War Thunder realistic and simulator battle videos than any other aircraft in the game. And it is gorgeous. And it sounds fantastic as well. But, well, there's something about the Mustang as well. The original Mustang, designed by the North American Corporation, an American company, obviously, but designed to a British specification. Originally fitted with an Allison engine, and it was alright, it wasn't bad. But the Mustang really only reached its full potential when it was fitted with the British Rolls-Royce Merlin. And oh my god, was this a good aircraft with that engine installed. The other thing about the Mustang that sets it apart from the Spitfire was that, well, the Spitfire's problem was always that it had pretty short legs. And this wasn't unusual, it was a European fighter aircraft. The Bf-109 had relatively short endurance as well. Something that the British used to great advantage when they were fighting the Battle of Britain. It didn't matter that the Spitfire didn't have particularly long range when you were defending your own air bases. Big problem for the Luftwaffe at the time. The thing is, a long distance flight in Europe, something like, for example, London to Frankfurt, 400 miles. That's nothing. That's nothing to an American. That's Los Angeles to San Francisco. A long distance flight in the USA is New York to LA. That's 4,000 miles. So aircraft built in the USA were built with this kind of distance in mind for long distance flights, which is what made the Mustang such a good bomber escort fighter aircraft. Something that the Spitfire just couldn't do. It just didn't have the range. This thing could keep going forever. So what's all this about the Mustang being an American aircraft built to a British specification, Jingles? Well, yeah, basically that's exactly what it was. By 1937 the British and the French were getting increasingly alarmed about German rearmament, and they were ramping up their own aircraft production but looking elsewhere for spare capacity, and that meant the USA. In 1938 the British placed a large order for North American trainers. By 1939 British and French were at war with Germany, and they were trying to get their hands on combat aircraft. Now, the only fighters that the Americans had available in 1939 and 1940 that were any use whatsoever were the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk, known as the Kitty Hawk in Royal Air Force Service, and the Bell P-39 Airacobra. Neither of them were particularly impressive, but the British still bought a large number of P-40s, which were serviceable at the very least, and a small quantity of P-39s, which they rejected almost immediately after evaluation. Now, the Curtiss Corporation was heavily committed building the P-40 for the US Army Air Corps, and they didn't have a lot of production capacity to spare. So the British sent a delegation to the North American company and asked them to produce P-40s under license from Curtiss for the Royal Air Force. North American Aircraft responded with a counter-proposal that they instead build an entirely new machine of their own design for the British, based on the Allison V1710 water-cooled 12-cylinder inline V engine, used in the P-40 but with better range and performance. The British agreed. This design would eventually become the P-51 Mustang. The second Mustang to be built was the first production aircraft, and it was rolled out on the 1st of May 1941, although this was well behind schedule. RAF test pilots, however, were delighted with the aircraft. In contrast with the Spitfire Mark V, the Mustang was substantially faster, at low altitude at least, with a maximum speed of 615 km per hour or 382 miles per hour. It handled better in many respects, and most significantly, it had over twice the endurance and range, 1,000 miles or 1,600 kilometres. There were some points of concern, however. The cockpit layout differed from that of other Royal Air Force fighters, which was going to make cross-training problematic. As well as this, the 7.62mm machine guns fitted to the Mustang used ammunition that was incompatible with the standard British 7.9mm guns. The biggest concern, however, was that Allison engine. And we're going to come back to the problems with the engine in a moment, because Garris has managed to get himself on the tail of a TA-152. Very, very, very nice German aircraft. And he has scored a hit, but no significant damage. TA-152, absolutely superb high altitude fighter aircraft. But it looks like he's managed to break clear. He's now on the tail of the Bf-109K, one of the later versions of the Bf-109, very heavy, very powerful, and very, very well armed. Not sure if he scored any hits on the Bf-109K, but if he did, he didn't do any damage, and he's managed to break clear. And Garris is going back for the altitude and disengaging from the dogfight. You'll notice, by the way, half of Garris's team have been shot down for the loss of only 2 enemy aircraft. And he's looping back around on that TA-152, who broke, disengaged, and is going for a friendly P-51 down at slightly lower altitude. TA-152 designed by Kurt Tank, fantastic German aircraft designer who also designed the Focke-Wulf 190 and was so highly regarded by Hitler that he was in fact the only German aircraft designer who had an aircraft named after him, the TA in the name of the TA-152 standing for Tank, the name of the designer. Oh, but what about the Messerschmitt? Well, it was never called the Messerschmitt, was it? It was the Bf-109, the Bayern Flugwerk. It was named after the factory that manufactured it. And he's got a problem here. That's a Dornier 335. What the hell is that? To my eternal shame... Whoa! Check that out. That was damn close, but he's back on the tail of the TA-152, and he's got him! Fantastic stuff. I have to admit, to my eternal shame, I have absolutely no idea what a Dornier 335 is. I actually had to go and look this up. Of course, once I saw a picture of it, I thought, oh, right, yes, I have seen the Dornier 335 before, and he's just been hit, he's been taken down. by another friendly Mustang. And I'm quite surprised that Garrus didn't attempt to put a few cheeky shots into him as he went past, but he's not interested in stealing the kills. He's quite convinced that that guy is out of this match, and he's absolutely correct. Claude Dornier, famous German aircraft designer. Hang on a minute, sounds a bit French. Well, it's a common mistake that people make. He was actually German. His father was a French wine importer. His mother was German, and he was born in Bavaria. More well known for his medium bomber aircraft. But obviously, as you can quite clearly see here in War Thunder, also designed a couple of fighters. Not entirely successful, however. The thing about the Dornier 335, and you'll instantly recognise it when you see it, is it's got two propellers, one at the front, one at the back, which makes things very interesting on takeoff. Anyway, Garrus has now got himself on the tail, and twisting and turning like he's doing it for a living of a Focke-Wulf 190, and he's hit! And that looks like a fuel tank fire. He's going for the altitude again, and it does not look like that guy's going to recover. Flak's coming up to meet him, getting awfully close to some of those German destroyers in the fjords, and he's managed to brake and get clear, and he doesn't appear to have even taken a scratch in his aircraft yet. Whoa, that Flak is getting close, however. There are, of course, now only 4 players left on his team, and they've only managed to shoot down 5 enemy aircraft. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. And things are going to get worse before they get any better. 2 aircraft engaged that Bf-109 up there. The Bf-109 has just shot one of them down, although that Mustang up ahead has set him on fire. But the Bf-109 now, at least at first, seemed to have the advantage. Now, he was on the tail of that Mustang up ahead, got some shots off, but then went into this dive. And I think what's actually happening here is that Garrus is thinking that this guy's dead, and it's only now that he realises that the Bf-109 has actually managed to extinguish the fire, and he still has control of the aircraft. And it looks like he's coming up to get him. So Garrus had the opportunity to get a kill there. And I believe he misread the situation, and the Bf-109 is now chasing him towards another enemy aircraft. And the other surviving player on the team, in Premium Spitfire, has just managed to crash. So now there are only 2 of them left against 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 enemies. Or at least, well, that's how it appears at first. Because that Bf-109K down there, the other Mustang is about, well, he's off to the rear and he's about 4 kilometres higher up. So he definitely doesn't just swoop down and shoot this guy down. And yet that Bf-109K does eventually register as a kill. In fact, bang, there it is. He must have taken too much damage and just lost control of the aircraft. And so the other Mustang, there he is all the way up there, actually gets credited with that kill. So now there's only 4 of them. They're still outnumbered 2 to 1. And here they come. Most of them Focke-Wulf 190s, and that's a different kettle of fish, the Bf-109K4. Well, the Bf-109K4 was certainly not a bad aircraft. The airframe was still a 1930s design. The Bf-109 first flew in combat in the Spanish Civil War. It had, of course, been updated and modernised as the Second World War progressed, but there's a limit to what you could do with the airframe. And speaking of Focke-Wulf 190s, there goes one of them, engaging the other surviving P-51, and there's another one coming in. Focke-Wulf 190 is not an easy aircraft to face, like the TA-152 designed by Kurt Tank, and not like the Bf-109, a 1930s design that saw continual upgrading. By the time the Focke-Wulf 190 was introduced into service, the Bf-109, while still a capable aircraft, was starting to show signs of its age. That didn't, of course, stop the Germans from continuing to upgrade and refine the design, and it still saw valuable service throughout the entirety of the Second World War, but there was a limit to what you could do with the airframe. By the time the Bf-109G was in service, it was becoming very, very heavy, very powerful, but not particularly flexible. So many different models and variations of the Bf-109G, for example, were made that the Bf-109K was in effect just an attempt to standardise production. And this was something that the Germans did a lot. They just couldn't resist tinkering and continually trying to improve their designs. And this isn't a bad thing, but at some point you have to just say enough's enough. If you look at the Russians, for example, with their tanks, they basically only built 2 tanks during World War II. The T-34 and the RES, and that was it. Does it work? Yes, great. Build thousands of them. No, tens of thousands of them. The Germans, by contrast, were still producing Panzer IIIs, Panzer IVs, Panthers, Tigers, Tiger IIs, and it wasn't just the number of different tanks they were building, there were multiple different modifications of these tanks as well. And the same was true of their aircraft, particularly the Bf-109, which made it an absolute nightmare of logistics to try to keep all of these aircraft serviced, maintained, and in production. There were so many different versions of the Bf-109G, for example, that eventually the Bayern Flugwerken just said, whoa, enough's enough, and settled on the Bf-109K as an attempt to standardise production of the Bf-109G. But they still just couldn't leave enough alone, and there were multiple different versions of the Bf-109K as well. The Germans just couldn't resist messing around with their designs, and this Focke-Wulf 190D9 has managed to catch up with him. He's tried to turn the tables on him, but nope, he was too close, he left it too late. And what you're seeing now is a classic example of a rolling scissors dogfight. These two aircraft, both very, very evenly matched. They're twisting, turning, using the flaps, using the rudder, using the throttle. They're going up, they're going down, they're going left, they're going right. They're constantly trying to turn inside the opponent and slot in on the tail for that killing shot. Now, if you're good enough, you have the situational awareness to not only be able to keep an eye on what your opponent is doing, but also to maintain sufficient control over the aircraft to beat the maneuvers of the enemy, as Garrus is doing here. A rolling scissors dogfight is a great way for a Mustang to take down a Focke-Wulf 190. However, it's only good if there's just the two of you involved in the dogfight, because all of these twists and turns, they sap your energy and your speed, and they make you vulnerable to attack from a third aircraft. And there's a third aircraft coming in. So while it does look pretty good that Garrus is going to nail this guy, that D9 down there, he doesn't actually have to beat Garrus. All he has to do is stay alive long enough for his wingman to join the fight, and then Garrus is dead meat. And it appears that he has given up on the rolling scissors, and he's just trying to stay alive long enough for the second D9 to catch up. And, well, too little too late. Garrus has got him. There's no way he's recovering from that. Where's the other one? He didn't quite make it in time. Almost, but not quite. Garrus has managed to break and avoid his attack. That guy is definitely done. And what Garrus is doing now is he's going for some distance and he's going for some speed. He's got the throttle all the way open. He's in a shallow dive until he can't dive any lower because he's skimming the waves, and he's trying to build up as much speed as possible. Give him some energy in the bank to deal with that Focke-Wulf D9. But it's not just the Focke-Wulf D9. There is actually another Bf-109K back there. Now, despite the fact that we have the user interface turned on in the replay, for some reason the game's only actually showing us the location of that Focke-Wulf 190D9. But there is a Bf-109K back there as well. And if you look at the horizon, there, do you see him? Just crossing the gap between those two spits of land there. That's a Bf-109K4 on the other side of that piece of land just up ahead. So we can see the position of the Focke-Wulf 190, and you will quite clearly see that Garrus is aware of the location of that Bf-109 as well. Every now and then he's going to look to his right and try to reacquire him as a target. But that's not the worst news, because a second Bf-109K has also just joined this fight. There's Garrus looking for the location of the guy that he knew was over there, but there's somebody above him and behind him. And I'm not entirely sure that Garrus is aware of this just yet. He's looking up. He knows there's something up there. And he thought, no, screw this. There's one of them. They're all over him. 3 on 1. No chance. Cut your losses. Get the hell out of there. It's quite lucky he's got the Merlin engine version of the Mustang, because if he was flying with the Allison engine, there's just no way he would have been able to get away from these guys. Oh, one of them's slotting in on him. He's trying to turn inside, get some solid cover between him, and there it is. There, oh, that was close. And there's the D9, and oh, that was close as well. The one advantage that Garrus has here is that he's actually relatively close to his own airfield. And anybody who's played War Thunder knows how deadly the anti-aircraft guns are around the airfields. And one of these Bf-109Ks, well, let's just say he's feeling lucky. that is Garrus's friendly airfield, just on the other side of this fjord. Look at the altitude Garrus is flying at here. If he was any lower, he could get his feet wet. Pretty soon, he's going to have the assistance of friendly anti-aircraft guns. There they go. There they go. One of the Bf-109s is diving on the AA guns. Oh, he's feeling pretty brave. Oops, it doesn't appear to have worked out too well for him. At some point, everybody is going to learn the hard way. Don't go anywhere near the anti-aircraft guns around an enemy airbase. They might not swat you out of the sky, but they probably will, and it's just not worth the risk. So, 1 down, 2 to go. Spot of good news, always welcome. Now, the other two, the Focke-Wulf 190D9 and the surviving Bf-109K, appear to have broken off and disengaged. And I think Garrus is contemplating returning to that airfield to land. He's low on fuel, and he doesn't have a massive amount of ammunition left. But while it's never wise to challenge the anti-aircraft guns of an enemy airfield, you're probably going to get shot down. It's equally unwise to attempt a landing on that airfield when there are a couple of enemy fighters in close proximity. So with that airfield out of the game, Garrus only has one option remaining. He's got to attempt to carry a landing. And the P-51D doesn't have an arrestor hook. So this is going to be interesting. So while he's heading back to the carriers for an attempted landing there, let's go back to the problems experienced by the early versions of the Mustang with that Allison engine before they received the Rolls-Royce Merlin. The Allison engine provided 1150 horsepower compared with 1185 horsepower for the Merlin 45 used in the Mark V Spitfire. Now this wasn't a massive amount of difference in engine power. However, the problem was that the Mustang weighed a third more than the Spitfire Mark V, so by contrast, the Mustang was actually quite underpowered. As well as this, although the Allison did have a gear-driven supercharger, it was optimised for low-altitude operation. See, development of the Allison engine had been guided by the requirements of the US Army Air Corps, and they didn't emphasise high-altitude combat. As a result of this, the Mustang's performance fell off dramatically, above 4 kilometres, or around 13,000 feet. Garrus is cutting his throttle because he was going pretty damn fast there, and he's leaving it very, very late for the approach on this carrier. They look like the sexy Lexi, by the way, the old Lexington. 3 of them there. Oh. Well, you know what my landings are like. Other people even refer to bad landings as a Jingles landing in their War Thunder videos, and he's managed to put it down, and that was pretty clean. Firing off the remaining ammunition in his 50 caliber guns to slow him down because the Mustang does not have an arrestor hook, and that was actually a pretty damn impressive landing. Well done, Garrus. The boy's got skills. And a short while later, with the dead bugs cleaned off the windscreen, fuel topped up, ammunition replenished, he's back in the air, and he's looking for those 2 enemy fighters. So, back to those early Allison-engined Mustangs. The Mustang Mach I, as it was known in Royal Air Force service, was actually rejected by Royal Air Force Fighter Command because of its inferior performance at high altitude. However, it was very, very good at low altitude, and so they were given to Army Cooperation Command, where they were used in the tactical reconnaissance role. Of course, fighter pilots being fighter pilots, it didn't take long before one Royal Air Force pilot on the 10th of May 1942 was conducting one of these reconnaissance missions when he decided to get a bit frisky, and he shot up an airfield and a supply train. These kind of reconnaissance and destroy missions quickly caught on, and the Royal Air Force adopted them enthusiastically, with their Mustangs operating in flights of 2, one with a camera to take pictures and the other one to hang back and keep an eye out for enemy fighters. The Mustang's first recorded air-to-air kill was achieved on the 19th of August 1942 during the badly mismanaged British practice invasion at the port of Dieppe in France. The pilot of the Mustang was an American, Hollis H. Hills, who was a volunteer flyer with the Royal Canadian Air Force. He would later join the US Navy and fly the F-6 Hellcat. Although the Royal Air Force had been using Mustangs successfully in combat since the spring of 1942, the US Army Air Force didn't get them into combat until March of 1943, during the invasion of North Africa. They gave good service as an attack aircraft during the Sicilian and Italian campaigns, and they worked very hard during the Salerno landings, flying off beachhead airstrips while under enemy fire. Combat operations, however, highlighted the vulnerability of the Mustang's liquid-cooled engine to ground fire, as well as a very high rate of friendly fire casualties due to its resemblance to the Bf-109. The Allison-powered Mustangs were good aircraft, and they would have had an honourable place in the history books even if the design hadn't gone any further. But when they were mated with the British Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the Mustang became a great aircraft. The poor high-altitude performance of the Allison Mustang was a concern right from the start, but nobody was really sure what to do about it. The Allison was just about all that was available to the North American Aircraft Corporation for the first production batches. The engineers considered moving to a turbo-supercharged version of the Allison, which was successfully used on the Lockheed P-38 Lightning, but they decided against it. Meanwhile, the engine manufacturer Packard had come to an agreement with Rolls-Royce in October 1942 to build the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, which was used in the Supermarine Spitfire Mark V. Like the Allison, the Merlin was a 12-cylinder liquid-cooled inline V engine, but it had a far superior power-to-weight ratio. By 1942, Packard was producing these Merlin engines in quantity as the Packard V1651, but supplies were limited, and there were doubts that the Merlin was a big enough improvement over the Allison to make converting to the new engine worthwhile. The Merlin didn't offer much more power, and it only had a 2-speed supercharger. In fact, the P40 would be converted from Allison to Merlin power, and showed no great improvement in performance. Rolls-Royce had been continuously improving the Merlin, so much that the company began to regard further work on the engine as yielding diminishing returns, with the future lying in the next generation Griffin engine. Despite that, in mid-1941, the Royal Air Force issued a requirement for a high-altitude bomber, the Wellington Mach 6, and so Rolls-Royce began work on a Merlin variant optimised for high-altitude operation. Now, the Wellington Mach 6 was never built in great numbers and it never saw much service, but the new 2-stage Merlin engine, known as the Merlin 61, was very, very promising indeed. And both Rolls-Royce and North American Aircraft both started developing versions of this engine for use in the Mustang. This would eventually result in the P-51D, the legendary version of the Mustang, which Garrus is flying for us in this realistic battle. Merlin engine Mustangs offered such a vast improvement over the Allison. They could actually generate more horsepower at altitude than the Allison could manage on takeoff, and managed to climb nearly twice as fast as an Allison engine Mustang. Let's not forget, of course, that an aircraft isn't just an engine with some wings attached, no matter how good the engine is. There were other innovations in the design of the P-51D that made it an exceptionally good fighter aircraft, and one of them was actually relatively simple. A US Army Air Force colonel by the name of Mark Bradley had visited Britain in 1943 and had been very, very impressed with the bubble canopies that were fitted to the Spitfire and the Typhoon. They offered the pilot completely unobstructed all-round vision. And I can't stress how important this is for the pilot of a fighter aircraft. The overwhelming majority of fighter pilots shot down during World War II never saw the aircraft that killed them. Actually being able to easily see what's going on around you at all times is a massive advantage for the pilot of a fighter aircraft. Which seems like a particularly apt moment to talk about what's actually going on now during this realistic battle, as Garrus is gaining altitude with his eyes peeled, looking all around, trying to spot the 2 remaining enemy aircraft. What one of them has done is he's activated the blind hunt mission. Now, your opinion of what is actually going on right here might vary from mine, but I'm going to lay mine out on the table for you and present a counter-argument as well, just for the sake of a clear and balanced argument. What happens when somebody activates a blind hunt mission is that the target of that blind hunt, in this case Garrus, becomes visible on the map for every enemy player. They see you on the map, they see you in the 3D game space as well. That target indicator pops up over your head. Everybody knows immediately exactly where you are. Now, you could argue that if you're playing a realistic or a simulator battle, for example, and there are very, very few aircraft left in the end of it, the last thing you want is for the battle to drag on and on and on, with nobody actually being able to find each other. These battles take place over a huge area, and that's certainly an argument. On the other hand, however, it really has to piss you off if you've taken every possible precaution to minimise your chances of being spotted. You're flying with the sun behind you, you're taking advantage of cloud cover, in order to try, when the odds are against you, when you're the last pilot left on your team and you need every advantage you can get, and staying undetected is one of those, how much is it going to piss you off if all an enemy player has to do to completely negate all of the efforts that you've expended is to just activate a blind hunt mission and immediately see where you are? The thing, however, with the blind hunt mission is that it only lasts 2 minutes. And if the target of that blind hunt, in this case Garrus, has not been shot down within those 2 minutes, the blind hunt then switches to another player. And in this case, since Garrus is the last player left on his team, the next player available is an enemy player. So, how do you like them apples? There he is. He is now the target of the blind hunt mission, and now for the next 2 minutes, Garrus knows exactly where he is at all times. Is there really a place for this sort of thing in realistic and simulator battle? Well, you be the judge. I don't have a problem with this sort of thing in arcade, but, well, let's try to keep our realistic and simulator as realistic a simulation as possible. Anyway, Garrus has definitely got the jump on this guy. Let's see if he can take advantage of it. It's looking pretty good. It's looking very good, in fact. And he's hit him. He's definitely hit him, but I didn't see anything critical. The Bf-109 rolls and goes into the dive. Garrus wisely chooses to keep the altitude and the energy advantage, and he looks like he's setting up for another attack on the Bf-109, but you have to ask yourself, where is that Focke-Wulf D9? He has to be close. If you look at the enemy team list, his name is highlighted, which means he has to be in visual range. Garrus misses the attack on the Bf-109. There's the Focke-Wulf. Holy crap, that was close. The Focke-Wulf goes high. He's got the speed. Garrus is almost stalling it, tries to follow him around, fires a burst with the 50 calibers and saws off one of his ailerons, and that is fantastic news because he's practically stalling this aircraft. But that's some very, very useful damage against a very nasty opponent at high altitude like the Focke-Wulf 190. Meanwhile, the Bf-109 is attempting to lumber his way up to altitude and catch him, but it's a heavy aircraft. While powerful, it's not going to have the speed. He's realised his mistake. He's trying to brake. Garrus is going for him. He's the undamaged aircraft. There's a hit. Oh, he's set him on fire. Oh, that is not going to end well. That is going to keep... In fact, he's got him. He's done. And now it's just Garrus against that Focke-Wulf 190 D9, who we last saw in a very steep dive with a damaged aileron, and no, he's got him as well. Oh, he must have broken apart under the stress on the airframe. Well, he's done it. And I think he's entitled to show off a little at the end of that really, really good realistic battle in War Thunder. Garrus Vakarian, German player, flying an American P-51D Mustang with a British engine, shooting down German pilots. Well done. Hope you enjoyed today's video, folks. It's been a long time since I did a War Thunder video, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.